Welcome to Coaching Deep Dives, presented by the Global Coach Collective. This is where evidence-based research meets practical application. Each episode transforms scholarly articles into dynamic discussions, examining the intersection of psychodynamic theory, organizational behavior, and practical coaching applications. Whether you're a certified coach, business leader, or curious learner, you'll discover how evidence-based coaching approaches can enhance performance and drive transformation. From exploring the psychodynamics of resilience to understanding culture-centric coaching models, this podcast bridges theoretical frameworks with real-world implementation.
Today we're diving into something that absolutely fascinates me: the neurological magic behind powerful coaching questions. We're exploring research by Dr. Michael Williams and Dr. Tammy Moser from the Global Coach Cooperative, and I have to say, this work bridges neuroscience and coaching artistry in ways that genuinely surprised me.
What struck me immediately is how Williams and Moser frame this whole conversation. They're not just talking about asking good questions, they're describing what happens in the brain when a question creates that breakthrough moment. You know that moment when a client suddenly sits up straighter, takes a breath, and you can almost see the shift happening?
Exactly. And the neuroscience behind this is remarkable. According to Moser's research, when a coaching question perfectly challenges a client's existing mental model without triggering defensive responses, there's this fascinating neural phenomenon. She describes it as a momentary increase in anterior cingulate cortex activity, followed by heightened connectivity between previously isolated neural networks. Essentially, the brain temporarily destabilizes and then reconfigures in more expansive patterns.
That physical reaction you mentioned, the pause, the changed posture, sometimes even an audible intake of breath, these are actually manifestations of neural reconfiguration happening beneath the surface. The Neuro Leadership Institute research they cite shows that these question-induced insight moments create distinct brainwave patterns that differ significantly from analytical problem solving.
This explains why our most powerful coaching questions often can't be answered through logical analysis alone. We're not just gathering information, we're actually helping clients reorganize information they already have. That senior executive they quote captures this beautifully. The question seems so simple, yet it stopped me cold. I physically felt something shift, as though pieces of a puzzle suddenly rearranged themselves.
What's particularly compelling is how Williams and Moser move beyond just understanding what happens neurologically to examining the specific dimensions that make questioning masterful. They've identified 5 key dimensions, and I think this framework could revolutionize how coaches develop this skill.
Let's break these down because each one builds on the others in sophisticated ways. First is precision timing, and this one really resonates with my experience. Moser herself acknowledges this evolution. I spent years developing an extensive repertoire of powerful questions. Then I realized that the same question could be transformative or fall completely flat depending on when it was asked.
This timing mastery isn't just about intuition. It emerges from what they call deep presence and attunement to subtle shifts in client energy, language patterns, and nonverbal cues. It's almost like being a conductor sensing when the orchestra is ready for the crescendo.
The second dimension, linguistic precision, is where the artistry really becomes apparent. The difference between asking, "Why haven't you addressed this leadership issue before?" versus, "What has made this leadership issue particularly challenging to address?" might seem subtle, but the neural pathways these create are vastly different. One triggers justification and defense, the other invites genuine exploration.
Williams puts this beautifully when he says, "The specific architecture of a question shapes what becomes possible in the client's thinking." When I'm crafting a question, I'm considering not just what information I hope to elicit, but what thought structures I'm helping the client build.
This connects directly to their third dimension, generative ambiguity. This concept initially seemed counterintuitive to me, but their research shows that questions containing what they call precise ambiguity produce 3.7 times more breakthrough insights than specific or confirmatory questions.
The paradox is fascinating. These questions are clear in direction, but open in destination. They create space where multiple insights might emerge rather than channeling toward a single answer. It's about opening territories for exploration rather than pathways to predetermined destinations.
Depth calibration, their fourth dimension, addresses something I see coaches struggle with constantly. Moser notes that depth miscalibration is one of the most common mistakes I see in coaching supervision. Coaches either stay too superficial out of fear, missing opportunities for transformation, or probe too deeply too quickly, triggering resistance.
This requires what they describe as sophisticated tracking of subtle client responses and a nuanced understanding of developmental readiness signals. It's about calibrating not just to the client's current state, but to the relationship's established trust level.
The fifth dimension, structural elegance, is perhaps the most sophisticated. They describe this almost musical quality to questions that consistently generate insights, a rhythm and structure that creates optimal conditions for new thinking. Their analysis reveals that breakthrough questions typically create productive tension between current reality and possibility, challenge assumptions without invalidating experience, and invite multiple levels of reflection simultaneously.
What I find particularly valuable is how Williams and Moser map out the developmental progression of questioning mastery. This isn't a skill you develop overnight. It follows a predictable sequence that coaches can intentionally navigate.
The progression from technique acquisition through contextual adaptation to intuitive fluidity and finally artistic mastery really normalizes the learning journey. At the novice stage, questions sound formulaic because coaches are accessing learned patterns rather than responding to the unique client before them. But as they develop, there's this beautiful evolution toward what one coach describes as questions that simply emerge from being fully present with my client, often surprising me with their impact.
At the highest level of mastery, coaches develop what they call a distinctive questioning voice, questions that have a characteristic elegance that colleagues can recognize. Master coaches report that their most powerful questions seem to arise not from their own thinking, but from the dynamic field created between coach and client.
This phenomenon of listening for the question that wants to be asked speaks to something almost transpersonal in the coaching relationship. It's a reminder that mastery involves transcending technique to access something deeper.
The practical pathways they outline for developing this artistry are incredibly concrete. The structured question journaling approach, recording the exact question, context, observable impact, hypotheses about effectiveness, and potential variations, makes implicit patterns explicit.
Their research showing that question-focused supervision accelerates skill development 2.4 times faster than general supervision is compelling evidence for specializing our developmental focus. It's not enough to just reflect on our coaching generally. We need specific attention to questioning patterns.
I'm particularly intrigued by their suggestion to study how questions function in diverse disciplines: scientific research, philosophical inquiry, investigative journalism. Williams mentions that the precision of scientific inquiry, the expansiveness of philosophical questioning, the penetrating clarity of journalistic investigation, each discipline offers unique questioning wisdom.
This cross-disciplinary approach could dramatically expand our questioning repertoire and sensitivity to different questioning architectures.
What strikes me most about this work is how Williams and Moser position questioning mastery as an endless journey. Even after decades of coaching, Moser reflects, "I'm still humbled by how much there is to learn about the art of questioning. Each client teaches me something new about how questions create possibilities."
This perspective keeps us in beginner's mind while developing advanced skills. The integration of technical precision with intuitive wisdom that they describe as the heart of coaching mastery, this is where the real artistry lies.
That client quote they include really captures the transformative potential. The questions my coach asked didn't give me answers. They gave me entirely new ways of seeing. The value wasn't in finding solutions, but in discovering that I was asking the wrong questions altogether.
This speaks to questioning as a practice of expanding consciousness rather than just problem solving. When we master the art of powerful questioning, we're offering clients entirely new cognitive territories to explore.
For our listeners who want to begin developing this artistry, I'd suggest starting with that structured journaling practice Williams and Moser recommend. Begin tracking your most effective questions and analyzing what made them impactful. Pay attention to timing, linguistic precision, the level of ambiguity that serves your clients, and how you calibrate depth.
And remember, this is a developmental journey. Whether you're in the technique acquisition stage or moving toward artistic mastery, the key is remaining fascinated by the subtle nuances of how questions create possibilities. That curiosity itself becomes a pathway to deeper mastery.
The research from Williams and Moser offers us both the scientific understanding and the developmental roadmap to elevate our questioning from technique to transformative art. In a field where so much depends on the quality of our presence and the precision of our interventions, this work provides invaluable guidance for coaches committed to excellence.
Before we close, remember to visit globalcoachcooperative.com, where you'll find the full article discussed in today's episode, additional resources on performance psychology, our complete library of coaching research and practice guides. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Coaching Deep Dives, where we transform coaching scholarship into actionable insights.